we have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you, one of which comes from a new group monitoring the webcast in Portugal. And I wanted to ask this question relatively early because they are, apparently they have some limit to the time factor on their internet connection. But this comes from, well, the question is titled Farming Under an Extended NWAPA System. And the writer says, "Greetings, Mr. LaRouche. I'm writing this to you on behalf of the entire nucleus engineering of the College of Technology and Management of Porto Alegre, Portugal. We have been following and debating with enthusiasm your proposals for new physical economic platforms. And we have a series of questions that touch on this, but also maybe somewhat different." He also apologizes for his English, which is also what's responsible for my halting asking of the question. But he says, several times you've criticized the imperial reductionist model of agriculture. We here are working with a group that is a rival to that, and we are looking at some of the work on sustainable agriculture. Now, what happens is that we've been debating that and discussing the fact that when you take out the mystical nonsense and let the few scientific principles that exist in sustainable agricultural practices prevail, it does get somewhat interesting. And one of the things that we are looking at is the pioneering work that was done by the CCCs in the United States. Also, we think that there may actually be some link between what really amounts to astrologic nonsense of biodynamics and the real science of fields of magnetobiology and cosmic rays, and we feel that's worth investigating. But boiling it all down, the real question that we have for you is how would a LaRouche principles-based farm and farming system work? If you could point us in this direction, it would help very much as we continue our studies.
Well, you've opened up again a very large subject. I mean, essentially, what I've done is of late, I took my nerves in my hand, so to speak, and decided to cancel the whole term of the use of the term infrastructure, because there's nothing wrong with the term itself. I mean, words really don't have guilt. But the use of the term sometimes is a very guilty business. You see, the nature, we have a big study going on, which is being reflected on our website, which is ongoing. It's crucial. We're examining systematically this whole question, and this goes with our treatment of looking at life on Earth, especially human life, ultimately human life, from the standpoint of the galaxy of which the solar system is a part. And you will find on our website a lot of material, more of it forthcoming, on the basic issues, the basic concepts which are expressed in looking at Earth and the existence on Earth from the standpoint of the galaxy. Because our solar system is a part of this galaxy. We're a fringe element on this galaxy. We came late, we got late to the party, and we're a fringe element. But we're very much still a part of it. And thus, the way in which life has developed on planet Earth has been really under conditions which are controlled by long-term cycles, in particular, of the galaxy, within the galaxy. for example, and the development of life. You know, contrary to most of this crazy theory, British theory, there is no such thing as a second law of thermodynamics. The history of life on Earth under the influence of this galaxy, with all the unpleasant things as well as the pleasant things that have happened that way, is always anti-entropic. The universe is inherently creative. It is not finite. It's finite in the way that Einstein spoke of Kepler. Finite but not bounded. That's finite. It's a fixed universe at any one moment of definition. But it's in process of becoming something unfixed, something new, something more developed. And that's its history of life on Earth, which we do have some knowledge of over some millions of years, or tens or more. So that life is on Earth, and human life in particular, shows us that the nature of life and the lawful nature of the existence of man is directly contrary to any stupid notion, such as the second law of thermodynamics. The universe is creative throughout. Mankind is intrinsically creative in a creative earth, as defined by these things are touched by the great Vernadsky, who deals with these kinds of questions on the question of how life is organized within the planet Earth. So, therefore, what we need to understand is, if we look at the history, you'll see on the website is coming out a whole series of things are being prepared for production. There are certain layers of development which have occurred in life on Earth and which occur in the transformation of life on Earth from relatively lower to relatively higher conditions of productivity in life, in human life. These principles, as examined, demonstrate that the universe itself is anti-entropic. There is no second law of thermodynamics in the universe. The universe is itself inherently creative. As Einstein said of Kepler's work, finite, yes, but it bounded, no. It expands constantly. It breaks all bounds. It goes from apparent boundedness at any moment to unboundedness in the next. And that's the way life should be organized. Now, therefore, in this process, when we look at the history of living processes on this planet, and my associates have done a lot of work in this thing, and it's good work, then they will do better work and more. It's the important thing we have to understand. We have to understand life on Earth and the conditions which have controlled the course of life on Earth within this solar system, within this galaxy, in order to understand lawfully what it is we have to do next. You have to adduce what are the principles, what are the ground rules in the universe, what are the ground rules in this galaxy, the ground rules within the solar system, on this planet. What are the ground rules for life as a developing process, human life as a developing process? Well, think in those terms. And then you say, well, wait a minute. The way life has developed on Earth, it developed in a series of platforms. And you will read on the website or see on the website our reports on this, which go through the successive layers of development which have led from the most primitive expression of life that we know of on the planet Earth to various steps, to the emergence of the system of water, aqua system, to systems of coming out of the water onto land, the evolution of species that come onto the land, and so forth and so on. So therefore we have to say, in order to understand the history of life in general, and the history of the solar system and of the galaxy as far as we know it, you have to think of these various layers or systems of development from lower to higher orders. And the same thing is true of mankind. For example, let's take the development of Europe, European civilization, which started with the Mediterranean as what we call European civilization today. Started with things that antecedents of the Roman Empire. And this went through various levels. First, it was a maritime system was the controlling factor. Then with Charlemagne, we had an opening which presaged what would become the United States. What Charlemagne did was to move inland, first of all with a system of economy, which was anti-Roman, but moved into take the rivers of inland Europe and connect these rivers by a system of canals. And thus, in creating what he did actually create is an economic system. He used this economic system and this system of rivers and canals, a riparian system, to make production and the power of life, human life inside Europe potentially greater than the advantage of a maritime culture. In other words, instead of depending upon going from across the Mediterranean Sea from one point to the other in trading and so forth and economy, now you could move inland, up rivers, and into the interior of Europe with greater economy and precision than you could by depending upon a maritime culture. Now, notably, the same thing happened in the United States as what Charlemagne had done earlier. We too, as Europe, as France and Germany had done under Charlemagne and following, we too, when we went to go from the coast of the Atlantic coast of North America, we too went to rivers. We built canal systems. When we finished the canals, we developed the canal systems. Then we, beginning with the Reading Railroad, we built railroads. The first railroads we built would move along the banks of the rivers and canals. Then, for example, the Baltimore and Ohio Railway system was a product of the Baltimore and Ohio Railway Canal System. So initially we moved, the railroads ran along the lines of the Charlemagne style of internal system. Then we branched out. We shot across America, and we created the United States as a functional United States with a transcontinental railway system. And then the smart Europeans looked at this and said, voila. Then Bismarck, who studied carefully and followed precisely the advice of the United States on economy, made a revolution in Germany, which included the provision for a transcontinental development of railway systems. And they did the same thing in Russia with the Trans-Siberian Railroad. Britain went ape because the development of this system with transcontinental systems of railway meant that the maritime cultures were losers economically compared to a transcontinental development of economy. And therefore we have understood, and I have understood and emphasized, the way to approach economy is in terms of what I call platforms. That the development of the basic economic infrastructure of an economy, such as the progress to a maritime culture from chaos, which, because the maritime culture was more powerful than a rim culture, a continental rim culture. So therefore, we go to the Charlemagne development, which is a step upward, a giant step upward relative to the time for mankind's existence. The development of the canal system was a giant step upward. The development of a system of organization of production based on this riparian system was a step upward. The addition of a railway system to this was a step upward. The development of a transcontinental railway system is a step upward. So each of these steps upwards in that and related features of technology define a platform within which the entirety of the economy exists. The economy is not composed of little elements added one to the other across space. A true economy is an integrated economy because it expresses the mind of mankind, the mind behind the skills of mankind. And therefore, we should always think of the development of a nation and of a supranational territory as such, as in the case of Portugal. We have to think of this in terms of developing what is the platform that this nation requires and in order to find the foundations for a higher level of productivity per capita and per square kilometer. And when we think in those terms, we're thinking in the right direction. And the problem is we think in terms of some guy with a little shop here or there does this and in some strange place, maybe in the desert or something, and somehow he's making an invention, and that's called progress. Bunk. As Hamilton understood the process and laid it out when he was Secretary of the Treasury, he developed the whole concept. The American system is based on this concept implicitly of platforms. And Hamilton's treatment of the U.S. economy, its design and development, was exactly that. You develop a platform, a level of systems in which the economy is contained. And this containment gives you a level of potential. That level of potential you use for the individual case of production and aspect of economy. You build cities, you build towns, you do all these things on the basis of this understanding of how to develop a platform at a higher level than you had before. That development of the platform to a higher level, which includes the increase of the energy flux density of the power sources you use. And that's the most crucial thing. For example, power, you go from wood burning, trash burning, you go to various fuels, including coal, coke, petroleum, so forth. Then you find you reach a limit. Oh yeah? Oh, we just got nuclear power. Well, that's the limit. No, we got thermonuclear power. That's fixing that up. Well, that will be the limit. No, we have matter antimatter reaction. That will be the next level. And this is all laid out as a system, an idea, implicitly in the work of Bernhard Riemann, in his habilitation dissertation, the third section. We build by layer, 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 layer. Higher layers, higher platforms of potential. And we locate production and other functions in terms of reaching, first of all, higher layers, higher levels of development, and then finding the technologies which these higher levels of development, which I call platforms, are functional. And therefore, what we need, say in Portugal, we need just simply the idea of an institution, which is like an academic institution, or like a laboratory kind of institution, which takes these kinds of considerations into account, and then acts as an advisor to the national government of Portugal, which can then do this research and indicate what the options are, the opportunities are, which Portugal can use, given the climate and the territory and the market it has. But I think this idea of platforms is essential for getting that job done.